A potential make-or-break week in Vienna as nuclear talks between Iran and world powers are set to resume. A new video released by Boko Haram that conditions the release of the kidnapped girls. 4 prisoners. Nigeria's government rejects the demand. And the EU steps up sanctions on Russian individuals and companies, while a separatist leader in Donetsk declares Ukraine's elections won't be held there. Welcome back to the news today. This is the Daily Debate. What are the limits of the free press in a democratic country? Does the parliament have the right to censor the media just because it contradicts with political agenda? This provocative subject will enter the center of attention in Israeli media when a law forcing limitations on the distribution of an Israeli newspaper, Israel Hayom, will be brought to a parliament vote. The newspaper is owned by billionaire tycoon Sheldon Adelson, who is considered close to Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, very close to Benjamin Netanyahu, and has contributed in the past to his campaigns. Joining me tonight to understand about the limits of democracy and journalism is investigative journalist Martin Himel.
Hi.
Good evening. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you for coming. And Professor Amir Hetsroni of the School of Communication at Ariel University. Good to have you. Thank you very much for coming. So, this is not something that is very special to Israel. This is not something that is never happened anywhere around the world, and basically it's new.
Well, if Israel Hayom is the example here, it doesn't even compare to the advocacy journalism that you have in the United States. I mean, Rupert Murdoch and his whole team are hell-bent making sure that the Republican Party takes over the United States and stays in power and stays in power. Their whole agenda is just to remove the Democrats. There's only 3 stories on Fox. It's Benghazi, the attack in Benghazi, which was a Democratic plot. It's healthcare, which is a Democratic plot. And it's Obama, who can't keep the United States strong in the world. It's all pro-Republican. On the other side, you've got MSNBC, which looks at the Republicans as some redneck, anachronistic movement that shouldn't be in the United States anymore, and is a Democrat, Democrat, and Democrat. If those were the yardsticks, there wouldn't be any press in the United States today.
Well, the problem starts and ends, in my view, with the fact that you cannot earn from journalism nowadays, and therefore journalism has become the toy field of billionaires who just are there for political reasons and not in order to make a business, and that's the problem. As long as journalism won't become a profitable business on its own, then we really have a problem with freedom of press, because only people who have other vested interests will come to this joint business.
So if we are trying to look at the United States, or even to look at our world, maybe our world is not an example because they're not a democracy, but if we're trying to look again at Israel and to look at can a parliament member in a democratic country actually suggest to limit or to close a newspaper?
In the United States, it's impossible. The Constitution doesn't allow anybody to stop you from saying anything. I mean, I've done documentaries where people have called to murder other people on camera, and in such countries you would go to jail, but in the United States you don't. In countries like Canada or Europe, there are limitations, not in the sense that you can close the agency down, but you can limit what they say. You can't have hate speech in Canada or Europe. You can't call to kill Jews or to kill blacks or to expel Arabs or something from Europe, because you'll go to jail. So they won't close down the newspaper or the station, but they can throw the person who's saying it into jail.
So when we're trying to look at the current situation in Israel, it's definitely a political move, this we know. But how come something like that is passing in Israel?
It's the kind of case that you say it's maybe not particularly unfair, but it's still very, very fishy. Look, let's be honest. This law does not advocate or suggest to close Israel Hayom. They say that Israel Hayom has to sell the copies for some price, for some minimal price. Now, if you ask me whether it is fair or not, it's not fair. But on the other hand, the current condition we're in journalism has become again the toy field of billionaires, or therefore other vested interest, is a problem. It is a problem. There is actually no freedom of press in Israel, even though legally there is freedom of press. Why legally, again, with some limitations, because there is no constitution in Israel that promises and secures freedom of press. But the problem is, again, if only billionaires enter the arena, we are in deep problem for freedom of press.
Well, it's not just billionaires. Because if you look what's going on in the world, there's advocacy journalism everywhere. I mean, look at WikiLeaks. It's broken every rule. It leaks things everywhere. The owner, I think, is still locked up in an embassy in London for some crime that's either he did or didn't do. But certainly it's because he's of WikiLeaks more than anything else that he's been targeted. And that's just one example. Another example is Snowden, who has managed to take advocacy journalism almost single-handedly.
So if maybe you mentioned WikiLeaks, maybe WikiLeaks is a real journalism. Maybe you can choose whatever you want to choose and read it instead.
Well, I'll tell you the problem with WikiLeaks. When I went to journalism school, there's something called responsibility and implications. WikiLeaks is just vomit out the information no matter what the implications. In WikiLeaks' case, a lot of people died because of the stuff that came out. So there's got to be some sort of responsibility, and there has to be some sort of analysis.
You know, when we try to examine the current situation, can a journalist actually be free when he knows that the owner is extremely close to the government, is extremely close to the prime minister? Can you actually be completely free in your writing?
No, and actually it's never been that way. In the turn of the century in the United States, William Randolph Hearst, the Hearst Papers, the Yellow Press, which advocated the Spanish-American War and Theodore Roosevelt going to war, you were told what to say, and much more than maybe today in the printed press. So there's always been someone there as an advocate, but there's always been somebody very courageous, somebody who stood against the line. And sometimes it wasn't even, it was a leak, like we say with WikiLeaks. For instance, in the 1970s, Daniel Ellsberg, who released the Pentagon Papers when the Vietnam War was gone and exposed enormous things and went on trial for it. So there are still heroes out there, but there's a lot of very powerful interest groups that try to stop it.
You know,
heroes are slowly disappearing, mainly also for another reason, and this is the salaries that the press is paying, or actually not paying to its workers. I mean, when you are working as a freelancer and earning, 5,000-10,000 shekels per month, what can we be expected of you? It's a problem. This business is a declining business, and as a declining business, which is nonetheless very important for democracy, this is a very, very turbulent condition, and we must, I guess, in my view at least, think about what to do, because it cannot stay this way. If it stays this way, we are in a problem with democracy.
Exactly the point that I want to say. Gentlemen, maybe you will help me with this. When I went to journalism school, the first cliche that I heard, and it became a cliche, that journalism is the watchdog of democracy. And what I discovered is that journalism became the dog of democracy. The dog that democracy is actually pulling and getting it out. And I don't want to continue, but we are not, it seems that we as journalists are not fearless.
Well, today actually you have more of a chance of being fearless and having an individuality than ever before because of the power of the internet. I mean, if you really have a hot story, if you really have something incredible and you really want to get it out, like Snowden wanted, you can get it out and it'll get big waves. If it was 30 years ago, 40 years ago, you could have been silenced. Today, nothing can be silenced.
But then you will be pointed at as enemy.
You might be, but that was the way it was before, too. You have to have a lot of guts. So I'm saying there are tremendously powerful interest groups everywhere. In the United States, Israel, in the Arab world. I mean, there's Al Jazeera journalists who are in jail in Egypt because of a power fight there. You have to have a lot of guts to come across the mainstream, but you can be heard because of the power of social media and the internet.
You ignore the fact that any second journalist has to run from job to job. And when you have to run from job to job and you cannot make a living, then you cannot really be free, and you cannot really have the possibility of exposing all the atrocities to the world, because you are worried about how you will pay your bills at the end of the month. As long as we are in a business that doesn't pay its workers properly, it's doomed. It's doomed. And this is what happened in other businesses as well. And again, this is something that I would worry about. If you think that you can pay journalists on average, don't know, 7,000-8,000 shekels per month and expect to have great freedom of the press, forget about it. You won't have it. You can have freedom of press only when journalists are paid properly, only when they have some job security, which is something they don't have in Israel, particularly also in other countries as well. But in Israel, it's very, very serious and very, very problematic condition.
I want to continue discussing about this matter, but if we're looking, and I want to get back a little bit back to Israel Hayom and to look at Israel Hayom didn't help Benjamin Netanyahu in the elections because let's say Benjamin Netanyahu did not really win the election in a bid like everybody predicted that it will happen, like in 2013 and 2009. So we cannot say that.
Maybe we would have done worse without Israel Hayom.
Maybe.
You cannot say for sure.
So can a paper actually affect?
Yes, it can. It can. If it's got a focused message and just rams it through day in and day out, it has a big effect. In the United States, we really see that. I mean, Fox News.
But in the case of Israel Hayom, everybody knows that it's pro Benjamin Netanyahu.
Yeah, and everybody in the United States knows that Fox is pro-Republican. But Fox kept ramming through how bad healthcare is, and it had a real effect. It's made it unpopular, and that shows the power of media.
And in Israel, we...
Oh, so. Now I'm talking to you as a professor of journalism, and as a professor of journalism, all the studies show that the real effect of the press on ordinary people is very limited. There is a big effect on politicians. Politicians think that the press is working and is effective, but to normal people, they care about other issues. They also have bills to pay, and they don't really care so much about politics. Definitely not about what Israel Hayom op-ed writes about Netanyahu. But what do we talk about? Israel Hayom is not really a newspaper. It's just a bulletin of Netanyahu. I mean, come on. I think that they should have the right to operate because I believe in freedom of the press in the most, in the widest sense of the word. But it's not a newspaper.
But you know, we can say that there are some really prestige and honorable reporters and journalists who are working there.
For a good paycheck, everybody will do it. I'm sure that for a good paycheck, all three of us will work for Israel.
See, somebody's making money there. Somebody's making money.
Yes, definitely. I mean, if you write 300-word articles, if you can call them articles, and for this thing you get, I don't know, 30,000-40,000 shekels per month, why not? I mean, write 2 articles like that a week, and you have a great paycheck. But to call it journalism, it's not journalism.
What you're saying is really, really worrying, because at the end of the day, everybody in Israel specifically, we're looking at it, maybe it's also in the United States, it's also in the United States from what I hear, it's basically you are going where the money is, and you're not actually doing your job as a journalist.
Because you have a mortgage to pay at the end of the month. And again, if we speak about Israel Hayom, we forget that the average length of items there is like 300-400 words. I mean, what can you talk about in 300-400 words? They are doomed to eventually write just in bullets about things that look very, very scandalous. Of course, always in the favor of Netanyahu. And that's what you get as journalism.
You know, it actually gets comical sometimes. In the United States, it's become comical because CNN, which was a very reputable network, has been called the Lost Jet Channel, because CNN for 7 weeks had only one story on it because they wanted to create a drama, that's all, and that was Malaysian airline disappeared. It was breaking news. Malaysia Airline has disappeared. An hour later, breaking news. Malaysian Airline is still disappeared. Breaking news after that. Another report. It is still under the water. And you have very serious journalists who have great credibility, who have seriously compromised it because they're breaking news all the time about a story that's not a story, and it's just become a melodrama. And this is it's comedy, but it's also sad.
It's comedy because when you're watching, even in Israel Channel 2 and Channel 10, everything is breaking news.
Right.
Everything is published for the first time. Everything, although it was published 2 months ago in another channel. But it's where does it put objectivity? Where does it put?
Oh, that's a sadly lost word.
Oh,
objectivity is a sadly lost word.
You just killed my world.
It's a sadly lost word. There was, I think there is in the printed press some objectivity left because you can still snapshot something and stop. But in our, immediate journalism, it's very hard to have objectivity because you need time and perspective to put it in. In magazines or in print where people actually take the time to think about it, you can still have it. But unfortunately, advocacy journalism has taken over, and you really have to watch 2 or 3 outlets to get some sort of feeling of different viewpoints.
You're talking about a lost word because there is actually no longer any real printed press. What do you have? You have 2-3 billionaires who are, again, using it as a toys, and that's it. I mean, how many newspapers do you really have in Israel nowadays? How many magazines do you have? not counting, of course, magazines about motorcycles.
As an expert in Israeli media, and you see Israeli media, there is a phrase that people are always saying, that the left is controlling the Israeli media. If you're watching it in a really, really good way and deep way, it is not correct.
Well.
Just watch the panel on Channel 2, watch the panel on Channel 10. It is not dominated only by lefties.
Yeah, no, but there is a major difference between the major talking heads who are indeed more tainted to the right wing, or at least are very centrist, and the rank and file of newspaper personnel who are indeed more to the left. They are also poorer, and they usually leave their jobs after a couple of years and move to high-tech or something, because you cannot make a living.
As a leftist?
Not as a rank and file in journalism. You can make a living if you are a major anchorman.
But isn't Haaretz an exception? I mean, Haaretz is very brazenly left.
Look at the names of journalists in the one sentence. Look at the names
thank you very much.
One
Thank you very
sentence.
much. No, I have to finish. Thank you very much. I don't know if to keep my daily job anymore. Thank you very much for this. We're going out for a small break, and then we will be back for the I-24 News one-on-one.